Good evening. The Lawrence Alliance for Education meeting for May 8th will now come to order. The time is 6:10. Maria, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Dolores Calaf.
Present.
Edgar de Leon.
Present.
Arlene Garcia. Present. Juana Matias.
Present.
Maria Muller.
Present.
Mayor Brian de Peña.
Present.
Chair Patricia Mariano.
Present. Could we all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, we have the honor here at our board meeting to have Interim Commissioner Russell Johnson, who's here to address the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mariano. And I just really want to offer some opening comments, some opening remarks as you begin this important process tonight, and really just to offer my gratitude to you for being here, for everyone who's in this auditorium this evening, and everyone who's watching live. Just have a few prepared remarks that I'd like to share with you. So first, again, I want to double down on this expression of gratitude and thanking you for your dedication and participation with this superintendent search process. The LAE's choice for the next superintendent is one of the most important decisions that you will make this year as a board. I recognize the many hours you have already put into this process, and I want to thank the parents, students, district staff, elected officials, and all of the community stakeholders who participated in the process by completing, first, a survey with close to 2,000 responses, attended meetings to help develop the vision for the person who will be the next superintendent of Lawrence Public Schools, and then the creation of the interview selection committee members who committed much time and effort to provide the LAE subcommittee with their reflections and thoughts for consideration. I just have 3 important points to share with you tonight. The first is that I understand that counsel for the LAE advised members of the board to seek guidance from the State Ethics Commission about potential conflicts of interest they may have related to the superintendent search process. And I appreciate, very sincerely appreciate, that members have followed that advice. Second, I commend the LAE Superintendent Search Subcommittee, Chair Mariano, Member Matias, Member Moeller, who put forward a strong slate of diverse, experienced candidates who you will meet later tonight. The subcommittee was tasked with identifying finalists to bring before the full board. After candidate interviews, they carefully considered the perspective of everyone on the interview committee, reviewed their recommendations, and made the final decision to bring before you this impressive group of candidates. These candidates are diverse in their backgrounds and experiences and reflect the feedback from the Lawrence community about what they would like to see in their next superintendent. Third and final, before I offer a little conclusion, is that I am especially impressed by the transparent and robust interview process that has occurred over these last 2 days, yesterday and today. The candidates have already been interviewed by 6 panels, including stakeholders from across the city, some of which were live streamed and have also attended a school tour. As a former person who applied for a superintendent job and became a superintendent, I will tell you this is a very thorough process. They have spoken to students, families, teachers, administrators, and community members. For those of you watching tonight, the recorded interviews are available on the LPS website, along with a feedback form, very importantly, this feedback form, so that community feedback can be considered before the LAE Board's final deliberation. I encourage maybe this is the most important thing that I'll say tonight. I encourage the LAE to listen to the critically important feedback from those stakeholders that will provide you with the information and input that we need in order for you to make this important decision. So finally, in conclusion, as you embark on the next week of careful consideration and deliberation, because we know that tonight is simply the interviews, there will be this second follow-up step that you will take to go review what you have heard tonight, review input from the community, and go through that deliberative process. I really encourage you all to continue this process with the fairness and objectivity that you have throughout this process. I encourage you to listen carefully to each candidate with an open mind, be curious about what they will bring to this community as superintendent, and their ability to maintain the progress that Lawrence Public Schools have made over the past decade. When the LAE comes back to deliberate and make their final selection, I encourage you to discuss and vote for what is best for the students of Lawrence, and I have great confidence that you will. My confidence extends to every member of this board in your ability to identify the next superintendent for Lawrence Public Schools, and I very much look forward to your recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
The final thing that I'll add is that I was planning to stay and watch the interviews myself in this room, and members of my team said, Russell, you need to remember you are now the acting commissioner, and having the Commissioner of Education sitting in the room where they are being interviewed is maybe a bit of an unfair pressure. I will be tuning in. I have the live stream queued up on my phone, and so I'll be listening too, and I can't wait to see what comes of a great set of interviews tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those words. We truly appreciate them. All right, on the agenda this evening is the interview of the 4 candidates. So we will start shortly with the first candidate. Thank you.
Discuss before the candidate's brought out. She's here.
I'm sorry?
Is there anything else we need to discuss before we bring out the first candidate? Do any of the LAE board members have any questions after the commissioner's comments? If not, Sylvia's ready to bring out our first candidate.
All right, any questions?
Yeah, I would love if I opportunity to ask a question as someone that was not in the subcommittee, just asking in terms of updates, in terms of process, sort of how do we get here?
Any members of the subcommittee wish to respond?
Happy to provide that update. And of course, Member Moeller and Member Mariano, feel free to jump in and add your perspective. Member De Leon, Alma Group conducted interviews of 40-something candidates. They narrowed them down to a list of candidates that were presented to myself, Member Moeller, and Member Mariano. We had an initial meeting where we looked at their recommendations, and the 3 of us voted to move a slate of candidates to the second interview. There was a 2-to-1 vote during that meeting, so there was a majority of members in that vote that decided to move 6 candidates to the second round. At that second round, your subcommittee, made up of myself, Member Moeller, and Member Mariano, and some community members that Chair Mariano had added to this panel. I'm happy to share their names. There was a teacher by Edward Reynoso. There was the VP of the Teachers Union, Mindy. Richardson, I believe is her last name. We also had school committee member Jonathan Guzman as a part of that committee, and we had a parent who dropped off in the midst of interviewing. She came to the first interview and did not continue in the process. Those additional community members joined your 3 LAE board members during the second interview. They had their suggestions and opinions. We took those suggestions and opinions into consideration. Your LAE subcommittee members, the 3, voted 2-1 to move forward 4 candidates. Those 4 candidates were moved forward. The Alma group then conducted a background investigation on all candidates to ensure there was nothing that we were not aware of. During that meeting, where we received all the reference and background investigation information, we took another vote. Your 3 subcommittee LAE members voted 2-1 to move 4 candidates forward. And that's how we've gotten to today. Don't know if that provides sufficient clarity. Happy to answer any questions you have. And Pat and Maria, if you have anything to add, please do so.
Thanks.
Any further questions, Edgar? Maria, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I feel that was accurate.
All right. Hearing none, we'll continue with the candidates. The first candidate we're interviewing tonight is Legidia Noriega Murphy.
Hola, buenas noches.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, gracias.
My name is Patricia Mariano, and I am the chairperson of the Lawrence Alliance for Education. I started my career in Lawrence, where I was a teacher, assistant principal, and currently serve as an elected school committee member as well. We thank you for spending these 2 days in our district hearing from students, parents, community members, teachers, support staff, school leaders, and district administrators. In your final interview with us, the members of the LAE want to learn a bit more about you now that we have you in person. The LAE has had access to previous interview notes and videos as well as your references. We have 45 minutes, so please expect us to spend 5 to 6 minutes on each question. Juana, at the end of the table, will serve as a timekeeper to ensure we have time at the end for you to ask us any questions. Before we begin, I would like the LAE members to introduce themselves, briefly sharing their name and their role and connection to the Lawrence community. And we'll start with my far right, Edgar.
Hey, good evening. My name is Edgar De Leon. I am currently the Chief Equity Officer at a private school called the Noble and Grano School. But before that, I was a teacher here at the Lawrence High School and was a director of the Math and Science Upper Bound program with Lawrence kids out of UMass Boston. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, gracias.
Dolores?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hola.
Hola.
My name is Dolores Calaf. I have lived in this community now for 33 years. I originally from Puerto Rico and came here to do graduate studies. And for the past 40 years, I have been involved in leading, working in community partnerships. I've been working mostly in teaching in different colleges in the area of early childhood education. And I was the director of one of the colleges here, Cambridge College. Thank you.
Mayor?
Good evening. My name is Brian De Peña, Mayor City of Lawrence. I live in the city of Lawrence for the last 34 years. Welcome to the city of Lawrence.
Gracias, thank you.
Good evening, Ms. Noriega. Thank you for being here. My name is Arlene Garcia. I am the parent liaison for the Lawrence Family Development Charter School. I have been living in Lawrence now for over 24 years. And prior to Lawrence Family Development Charter, I was at Salem Academy in Salem, Massachusetts, in a similar role.
Thank you.
Hi, Ligia. My name is Maria Gonzalez Moller. I have been working in the city of Lawrence for a little over 30 years now. And I currently lead, I've been at the same nonprofit organization, which I now lead the community group as a community partner for the district and focused on early childhood education mostly.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ligia. Juana Matias. I currently serve as the Regional Administrator for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, but I've been a longtime Lawrence resident, a former elected official at the state level where I focused on advancing many education policies, but most importantly, an English first-generation immigrant student. And so this issue is critically important to me. Delighted that you're here and really looking forward to learning more about you.
Great, gracias.
Thank you, Board. Lydia, Edgar's going to start us off with the first question.
Again, good evening, and thank you. And that's really loud, I'm sorry. Good evening. We have read the materials and watched the videos of your prior interviews, and so we want to learn a little bit about your skills and background. We're obviously here for, most importantly, our students. Can you tell us about a student who impacted your career in education? And tell me how that student has impacted your leadership and how you lead others.
I can think of two students. One that was a newcomer and struggled through school and at the high school level and had these amazing skills in the arts, didn't speak English, and was accepted in the school that I opened, co-founder of the Boston Arts Academy, the Visual and Performing Arts. And this student found that was the home without speaking English, but found the wraparound services. And struggled because now she's a famous actress, so I won't mention the name, but she struggled when her parents were deported, and she had to stay alone. She went from school and found out that the parents were not home. And so that changed my trajectory on how we actually become really wraparound services to these students, because we were called right away that what was happening. The other phone number she had was two, one of the directors and one of was my phone number. So I had to say that was really, changed my life and perspective on how we serve students, what is our role, and I'm very happy to see that she's very successful. Beautiful human being who had to struggle with housing because now she was alone in a place where parents were not there, the apartment was locked, and it was a necessary way to get all the community to support her. She has some neighbors that were able to take care of her, but she focused on education. She knew that education was going to be the trajectory to be successful and to change her life. So I had to say that transformed my life. The other one is a sad story of a student that I love very, very much, in high school too, who struggled through life. I had a wonderful mother and 3 siblings, but the trajectory became more involved with gangs, and he used to call me mom because he used to come to the school and say, "Mom, I'm here to get my education part-time." So we tried to support him in different ways. But sadly, he was a victim of a shooting. But one thing that taught me is how we actually wrap around the services around the parents. I was able to hire the mom who, after losing her son, she couldn't function. It was a lot of things going on, and I can't even imagine how bad it was for her. So I hired her, and I wouldn't say the role. She transformed the lives of so many students, serving as a dean of students in a school because of her experience, But this taught me that we have to continue working with the students and the families. So students, even though it was a bad trajectory, it taught me that we had to get deeper involved in their lives and also the lives of the family. The mom has been able to raise 3 amazing young ladies, being successful even though after the tragedy. So to me, education saved lives. We were not able to have a great impact on this student, but we had the impact on the family. So this business is not just about education of students, it's about the whole community and how we embrace everybody.
Thank you.
Arlene?
Ligia, please share how you have addressed the components of early childhood development in your current or previous experience with a population similar to ours at Lawrence Public Schools. How you propose to integrate and address early childhood initiatives into our district.
Perfect. So right now, we at Malden High School, we have been able to expand the services for early childhood in terms of curriculum and instruction by building a partnership with daycare services. We received a grant called the CPPI grant that was released for early childhood. And so with this grant, what we do is we don't have capacity in our buildings to have early childhood education or to the funds to do it. So through this grant, what we are doing is working closely with the daycare services providers, training them on the curriculum that we acquire for pre-K to 8 in our schools. They participate in the same professional development as our early childhood educators. And we also offer summer school programs. So that's something I would like to do here to see if we have more space in our schools. If we do, what is the curriculum that we use? And the curriculum that we use for early childhood is based on child development, but also literacy, early literacy interventions on how they start learning their sounds, phonics, so we can start working very early on acquiring literacy skills. So that would be something I would like to explore if there are grants. What is the curriculum early childhood, and also working with the daycare providers, because the students eventually will come to our schools, and we want to make sure that they're going to be exposed to the same level of rigor. We can also learn from them, so they're going to be prepared when they come for our kindergarten.
Thank you. Maria, question 3.
So, given the receivership status at Lawrence Public Schools, how would you... Sorry, let me start again with the microphone on. Given the receivership status at Lawrence Public Schools, how would you work with the community, both internal and external partners, to create a path to local control without jeopardizing student outcomes?
One of the things that this is a great opportunity to rethink, revamp the way of how schools are managed or how schools are how to work with the city. And that would be something I would like to explore with the state and the city to see, not to go back to old ways, but actually revamp a new way of doing things where organizations will be part of the decision making, when we can have bylaws, where decisions are more given to the community at large, and also have the voice of staff, teachers, be part of the board if possible. And I want to make sure that receivership is part of the history, and I have been saying this in every single meeting. We don't want to repeat the history, so it's moving receivership history, moving on to excellence. How do we keep up with the things that I have been doing in schools? And I have to say I spent all day at the high school, and what I see is great. I was able to meet with some principals from middle schools and the staff, and a great job, I have to say. First of all, great job to all of you for putting the schools at this level to be able to talk about moving away from receivership. So, but building on this, I want to make sure that we are going to think really outside the box on how we actually regain control of the schools, but in a way that we have the voice of everybody involved, parents, students, organizations, staff, and principals, and that might be going for a board, a governing board with bylaws. Also developing a metric system to make sure that not only the superintendent is accountable for the progress of the district, but also who are who is on the board. And that means asking for data, participating in data, decision-makings that affect the school, such as budget, that we are going to make those decisions based on the need of the students. And how do we measure that? By jointly together, looking at data and see what are the steps that we need to take to make sure that every improvement that we have made will continue there and we can build on that.
Thank you.
Arlene?
And I apologize, my voice is gone. In your current or previous role, were there any missteps? What did you learn, and what would you do differently if selected for this position?
So I think in my current job, it was not understanding how the district actually negotiated contracts. I came from a district with 27 years of experience in a different format. And so one of lessons learned, right, it would be to start early on before we actually engage in conversations where everybody has their positions already taken, but to start having conversations with staff, with school leaders about the need of the schools, with teachers, with SEIU and the Lawrence Teacher Associations, to see what are the things that we want to explore together. Once again, a partnership. And then look at the financial ways, knowing that the grants are going to expire, so trying to make sure that we are, before we engage in conversations about salaries and things like that, that we know what grants are going to expire, how we are going to sustain the work without that extra funding, and then start engaging in what is the cost of living around the surrounding areas, and start working together, just have dialogues, open dialogues with the unions, with the board when it's selected, and to make sure that we are going to be in a good position to start engaging in conversations about new contracts, new ways of doing things in the city. So I think that was the part that I missed totally as a first-year superintendent, where I didn't learn how the city did contracts, which was a totally different way of how I was used to do it. So I will go back to how we did it in another district where I work at, that is early on opening dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you for that response, Leahy. I really appreciate it. My question for you is as follows. Could you tell us about a time when you developed or inherited a plan and determined that it needed to be changed? What steps did you take to implement those changes?
It seems like that's the history of my life, because in my position as an assistant superintendent, I was also deployed to schools that were not doing well, a school that one of the commissioners, who's no longer with us, and the current superintendent decided to close the school, but we couldn't do it because it's one of the oldest public schools in the nation, and there was a plan for that. And so the goal was always to get data, open dialogue, get people involved, get people to come and see what's going on, do needs assessments, look at the curriculum, instruction, look at the student accomplishments, look at the student skills, and that is by doing a lot of assessments on the students. Going to where I am at this moment, the same thing happened. There was a plan, but it wasn't going to address the needs of the students, so we revamped it by collaborating with teachers, collaborating with principals, and we adopted an entire literacy curriculum from pre-K to 8, and we piloted the curriculum. We asked the teachers to help us, parents. The majority of the people involved were parents and students from the high school because they wanted to make sure that the curriculum reflected the cultural backgrounds, and at the same time the readings were going to be diverse and not centered in European history. So every time I inherit something, I like to collect information, data, have meetings with people, look at what happened in the past, and when it's successful, build on that. If not, revamp it. Getting people on board and to buy in. So one of the things with the curriculum is that teachers were the ones that made the decision with the parents and the students. So we also have teachers, we pay stipends for them to create the pacing guide, the program studies, and the curriculum mapping. What do? Is involve people, and once again, data informs practice.
All right, and I have the next question. Over the past several years, LPS has adopted high-quality and culturally relevant curriculum materials across our schools. What experience do you have in leading district-level professional development tied to curriculum implementation? How would you tackle this issue in a district that values school autonomy?
Thank you. In my first interview, I have to say that a school leader said, autonomy comes with accountability, and that is absolutely true. I value autonomy. That's where I came from by opening a pilot school, so I have to learn the other way, right? When people tell you how many staff members you need to hire and what you need to have as curriculum. Looking at the curriculum for high-quality materials is something I would like to do an assessment, what we bought and how it's implemented. Because two different things. One is that you buy it, but it's just implemented or not, and what is the quality of implementation? Always married to rigor. So that would be something that we'll have to learn more about through data. My meeting with teachers, going and doing classroom observations, you will see me in classrooms providing feedback to the leaders, because the only way I can tell you if it is quality materials or not is by seeing the implementation of that. Also to see the professional development that has been done in the past and according to the curriculum that we have. I do believe that educators, including the principals, have to design their own trajectory on professional development, and so together we will do that. One size doesn't fit all. I know that you have a partnership with Unbound Ed, and that's what I also have, is how do we differentiate the learning of the educators? One is how do you unpack lessons, the standards, and some people are very good about that. So how do I can utilize the teachers who can do this well to become master teachers? How do we open classrooms that are exploratory classrooms where other teachers from other schools can go and see best practices? So all of this will be an assessment that has to be done quick. It might take at least 4 months to see where we are in terms of high-quality materials, high-quality implementation, and high-quality teaching and assessment. The same thing is married to the assessment. Are we assessing the students on what we are teaching them, or is the traditional type of assessments that we follow? So that is something I would like to also find out. So I wish I can give a straight answer, but because I don't have the data, I don't have the information, I cannot give you that. But do I have transformed and turned around schools and districts? Yes, I have.
Thank you. Edgar?
Yep,
Number
I have that
7.
What are the important considerations you have for establishing yourself as LPS superintendent for your first 100 days and determining the top priorities for the year based on what you've learned about the district? How would you go about building and creating connections in a community that is new to you?
Well, there are a lot of things to do in 100 days.
There was 4 questions, yeah.
I know. So, the title doesn't mean a lot to me. It means what I'm going to do with the role. And that is to actually start meeting with the community, spending time in here. My first day as a superintendent in another district, what I did was to serve ice cream, go to the library, and give books to students. And that was a great introduction to me as a superintendent. I'm an instructional leader first. And also, I care about the students. Love them, and that's why I do this work. And build partnership with the families, caregivers, and educators. So you will see me within the first 2 weeks, you will see me everywhere, trying to visit all the schools, trying to spend time in the summer school, trying to interview teachers who are going to be working during the summer period, and at the same time meeting with students that are actually in the middle school and high school. So you will see me doing a lot of things. The plan will be is during this. ¿O quiere que lo haga en español también? Okay. See?
I'm sorry. What are you looking for?
You have to mute yourself.
Oh,
The microphone.
So the priority is in those 25 days and then breaking it by 100 is do a lot of assessments. I have been reading already some of the things that are public, but it's going deeper to look at the school improvement plans. I couldn't find them, so define what they are for the schools, meet with the principals, and be laser focused on what are the measurements that we have to take and focus on in a short period of time, because once again, receivership is still here, right? So we have to make sure that we are going to have the metric systems in place to measure the growth of the students. Everything that we do in the schools should count towards making the students progress. The other one will be looking at the curriculum for every school. I ask these leaders, how do you define autonomy? And that is something that we like to define together, create a manual so there are no misunderstandings, and what level of autonomy that means. When they say curriculum, I would like to see the curriculum that's implemented, at what grade level, what are the lesson plans and units that students are exposed, and if it's aligned to the standards or not. Grade level curriculum is something that we'll be looking for, and I know it's still within the autonomy, and also to see what is the voice that we have from our educators supporting each other in the schools. Do they have time and space to do planning, to look at students' growth, to look at student data, to see what services the students need, especially with the SEL, the mental social needs of our students. So there will be a lot of things being done very quick, but going back there, we'll be looking at data, monitor data, look at the curriculum, getting ready for the year. That means looking at the master schedules built in the system that you're using here, and I love master schedules, trying to make sure that we are going to be in compliance for services for the ESL services, for special ed, that we have the educators that we need, recruit, making sure that we are going to support every principal to make sure that schools are going to be fully staffed when we start. So those are going to be some of the priorities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. What made you the best superintendent for the Lawrence Public School?
What I believe I am the person that you're looking for is that I have experience turning schools around, districts around, and not just turning them around, it's keeping the success going. I talk about one of the schools that came out of very bad situations with the state, underperforming to performing well. I am a person who likes to be able to not just build within the school, but within the city. So I will be looking for a partnership with you to see how do we actually support our schools, our students with housing, how do we support our staff with social emotional support. So if we take care of the adults, we take care of the students. How do we expand the classroom, not just to be in the classroom, but the city as a classroom. Somebody asked me about the arts, and I love the arts. So to see how the city will be the murals where our students can go and show their work, how our students can go and perform in different parts of the city. So the goal that I have is to expand the schools outside the walls of the school. So I am the person that you're looking for. I have done this for many years in different places, and you can hold me accountable for everything that I do, everything that I say I will do. If I need help, I will be the first one asking for help. I will pick up the phone and say, I don't understand everything. I ask a lot of questions because I don't like to make assumptions, and I love to work as a group. Partnership to me means working together, rolling our sleeves together, and engaging in the work.
Thank you.
Juana, how's the time?
We are doing okay for time. It is 6:50. We have planned between 6:50 to 7 a break. And so if we were to wrap up the interview, we would be running on time for the next
We have
candidate.
time for a follow-up?
We have 3 minutes if we have a follow-up question that anyone would
Okay.
like to ask.
All right, I have a follow-up question for you. There were articles that state that you did not include key partners in decision-making. Can you elaborate on what occurred in this instance?
If you give me a more specific examples would be great because.
Juana?
Yeah, I'm happy to step in. You had made a decision on hiring and letting go of staff, I think in your current or past role. And I think the teachers union in that community felt that they were blindsided with those decisions. I think you might have touched on this in your previous answer in terms of like communicating with partners much earlier on, but could you just share a little bit of context in terms of what went on there in this claim? It's a claim that we read about, and we would love you just to share your perspective.
No, thank you. So actually in this, the numbers that were given were misleading. I inherited a budget already done, and I believe that we cannot put a lot of staff on grants. Grants have an expiration date, and when you put people on grants, by default, you're already putting people on expiration dates. There's also a large group of staff that is non-union that are hired every single year. Prior to my arrival is math assistants and literacy assistants. Every year, they are let go because they work only for 1 year. Now we extended the contract to June, but usually by May 15 is when their contract expire. And that's a large, almost half of what people were saying, non-union members that have to be let go, not because of budget reasons, but because that was the practice that they have, and we continue having 1 year contract for them. So at the end of the day, there were only 10 staff members that were let go. We have faculty that didn't have their license, and we put every month reports about licensure, and that if you can go and see every monthly report that I do for the school committee, you can see that I report that every single time. Human Resources sends numerous emails to staff, phone calls saying, you need to renew your license, or otherwise you're not going to have a job. So I have to say that in there were a lot of people that were placed in grants that expired because they were COVID grants. So did I communicate with the union? There was no need at that time, because at that time there were no union, the majority of the jobs were no union jobs. There were grants, and that nobody really, there's no money. And the other ones is every year they are let go, and there are no union jobs.
Thank you for that. It's great to understand, the fact that you were just trying to ensure that fiduciarily, the school district was going to be moving forward accordingly. So appreciate the clarification.
Great, thanks.
Madam Chair, I have no further questions, and
Okay.
it's 6:50.
We're at the end, and we've asked our questions. Do you have any questions of us?
I do, but I don't think you might have time. To me, what is the vision that you have for the new superintendent?
Go ahead. Anybody want to answer?
Go ahead, Edgar. Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
I think there's a tremendous amount of positive work that has been done, and you've mentioned some of that in your meeting of our employees, our students, and our kids. And so we're actually looking at somebody that realizes that, and somebody that has a willingness to not only partner with the folks that are working diligently and hard right now, but also with community members that are really trying to make positive impacts as well. And then somebody that quite honestly, puts the priority on our students, and that ultimately is it.
Thank you. Thank you for spending this time with us. Our goal is to make a final decision by next week. All right?
Great.
But before you go, do you have them? Okay. We have a little something for you, and make sure you go through the hallway to get it as a thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I got wings too, so great. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to working with you, and we will see what happens. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Ligia.
so much.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Take care. Buenas noches.
Gracias. Oh, my goodness. I feel so honored. Gracias.
Madam Chair, 10 minutes?
10 minutes on
Yeah.
that time? All
Yeah.
right. Could I have a motion to take a 10-minute recess?
So moved?
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Edgar. Maria, please call the roll.
Los Dolores Calaf,
Yes, please.
Edgar de Leon,
Yes.
Arlene Garcia,
Yes.
Juana Matias,
Yes.
Maria Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian De Peña,
Yes.
Chair Patricia Mariano.
Yes. Could I have a motion to come out of recess?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. Maria, please call the roll.
Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Present.
Edgar de Leon,
Present.
Arlene Garcia,
Present.
Juana Matias,
Present.
Maria Muller,
Present.
Mayor Brian De Peña,
Present.
Chair Patricia Mariano.
Yes, present, thank you. Our second candidate that I'd like to welcome is Dr. Alma Gonzalez de Castillo. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome.
All right. My name is Patricia Mariano, and I am the chairperson of the Lawrence Alliance for Education. I started my career in Lawrence, where I was a teacher, assistant principal, and currently serve as an elected school committee member as well. We thank you for spending these 2 days in our district, hearing from students, parents, community members, teachers, support staff, school leaders, and district administrators. In your final interview with us, the members of the LAE want to learn a bit more about you now that we have you in person. The LAE also has access to the previous interview notes and videos as well as your references. We have 45 minutes, so please expect us to spend 5 or 6 minutes on each question. Warner at the end of the table will serve as timekeeper to ensure we have time at the end of the session for you to ask any questions. Before we begin, I would like the LAE members to introduce themselves, briefly sharing their name and their role or connection to the Lawrence community. And I'll start on my far right.
Good evening. My name is Edgar De Leon. I'm currently the Chief Equity Officer at the Noble and Greeno School, private school in Dedham, Mass. But before that, I was a teacher here at the Lawrence High School, and I was a director of an upper bounds math and science program that serves the kids from Lawrence, and I also used to be a student here as well.
Dolores.
Hello. Hola.
Hi. Hola.
I'm Dolores Calaf, and I've been in this community now for 33 years. When I came to Boston to do my graduates, at some point I ended here, living in Lawrence. But I worked in mostly education sectors, museum learning. I worked for the state, and then eventually I ended in research and particularly in early childhood education. So I am a professor in different colleges, a consultant, and part of this group. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Good evening. My name is Brian De Peña, Lawrence City Mayor. I live in the city of Lawrence for the last 34 years. I'm a businessman, and I have my children, the school, to my daughter and my son graduated a couple of years ago in the Lawrence High School, public school.
Hola Alma, mi nombre es Arlene García, yo soy la Parent Liaison para Lawrence Family Development Charter School aquí en la ciudad de Lawrence. Tengo aproximadamente unos 20 y pico de años viviendo en la ciudad de Lawrence. Antes de trabajar para Lawrence Family Development, estaba trabajando en la misma capacidad para Salem Academy, que es en Salem, Massachusetts. My name is Arlene Garcia. I live in Lawrence. I work for Lawrence Family Development Charter School as a parent liaison, and prior to that, I also similar role at Salem Academy in Salem, Mass. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Alma. My name is Maria Gonzalez Moller. I have been working in the community of Lawrence for a little over 30 years now, and at the same nonprofit organization that I now lead, focused on early childhood education and enrichment programming for Lawrence children.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Buenas noches, Alma. Yo me llamo Juana Matias. My name is Juana Matias. I'm currently the HUD New England Regional Administrator for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Before my time there, I was the Chief Operating Officer at Mass Inc., where we actually advance a lot of public education policy, and I was also the former state representative for this district that we're actually sitting in, and I am, a first-generation immigrant ELL student, so this work means a lot to me, and I'm excited to learn more about you and your vision for the district. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, we're ready to begin. Edgar has the first question.
Again, thank you for being here. We have read the materials and video and watched videos from your prior interviews and are excited to learn more about your skills and background today. Tell us about a student who impacted your career in education. Who was that person, and how did that person impact your leadership today?
Absolutely. So this student has been, very present in my life as an educator, because I never forget the lessons that, not that I taught them, but what he taught me. And so I remember this student being in my fifth grade science class, and he was a student that was serviced for emotional disturbance needs. He was in special education, and at that point, I always welcome our students through an inclusion process into my science class, and so I knew then that this student needed social emotional supports, and he didn't know how to express it, and he was expressing it through his actions. And it wasn't until I took the time to slow down and have a conversation with him and understand his story and his background that I was able to respond to his needs differently and form a relationship of trust where he was able to trust me and I was able to trust him, and form a partnership where he would show up as his best self in my class, but I would also show up as my best self to make sure that I would provide him the opportunities that he needed to be successful. Not only academically, but socially, emotionally, but also understanding his story and acknowledging that with that story there was funds of knowledge and assets that he brought with him, and they just needed to be discovered. And so that student has impacted my life, to be quite frank, and the work that I've done in 20 years in education, because that's what the fundamental practices that educators, that we do to support our students, right? To first underneath their Maslow needs and ensure that their basic needs are met. And then we take time to understand their social emotional needs, their backgrounds, their stories, so that we can better serve them. And then once we meet those basic needs of social emotional supports, of safeties, then we can then transpire to teach them, and they'll be open to the concept of exploring things that perhaps caused fear in them before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question 2 is for Arlene.
Alma, please share how you have addressed the components of early childhood development in your current or previous experience with a population similar to ours here at LPS, how you how you propose to integrate and address early childhood initiatives in our district.
Absolutely. So as a principal, I served a community very similar to Lawrence. And so what we did then is we first acknowledged that our 3-year-olds needed to come to school, and they needed some support and structures, because we know from research and literature shows that our kiddos that come from more affluent backgrounds have access to 10 times more words than our kiddos that come from disadvantaged backgrounds. And so because of that, it was essential that we provided opportunities for families to bring in their kids to develop that vocabulary, those knowledge, those early skills that our students need to set them up for success. But it also served a purpose because it provided our families with opportunities for them to engage in the workforce and explore other family needs that were present to them. And so what we did is we partnered up with Head Start, and we developed a program where we opened up 4 classrooms for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. And you will be surprised as to how fast these kiddos are able to acquire the language and develop those skills that set them up for success for kinder. So in Texas, we have a law that, early education and for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds is not mandated, but it starts in kinder. But it is my belief, and I strongly believe, that we need to reach our students way before then. And so if chosen to be the next superintendent of Lawrence, I would like to explore those opportunities where our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds are provided the educational means and the access to the literature and the vocabulary that they need that would set them up for success, to ensure that they're on-level readers and form a trajectory of success from the onset of coming into our pre-K programs. You're welcome.
Maria, number 3.
Thank you for that answer, Alma. Given the receivership status in Lawrence Public Schools, how would you work with the community, both internal and external partners, to create a path to local control while not jeopardizing student outcomes?
Absolutely. So first, we need to recognize with our internal communities that they have historical knowledge of our community, of our students. Historical knowledge that I don't possess, but I would like to engage in the learning process to acquire that knowledge and tap into their expertise to co-design an exit strategy for the receivership. I will tell you that across the conversations that I have with stakeholders, that is the end goal, that, we do exit receivership. And so that can be accomplished by having everyone partner up and come to the table with some identifiable action steps that are going to guide us there. And so my mind works in a very linear pathway to where I always start with the end in mind. And so if the end in mind is to exit receivership, then let's come to the table and have those complex conversations of how we're going to do that. What are those action steps that are going to lead us there, right? So when we have a clear pathway and an exit strategy, then we want to identify the stakeholders to bring them to the tables and then define what does that look like, what are those action steps, how much time do we have, and what resources are needed. And so it's also my understanding that our schools have autonomy, and that should not be something that should be compromised. On the contrary, it should be supported and enhanced, because with that autonomy comes innovation and ideas, and it comes success, because there's different ways of getting to point A. There's not one direct linear way to get there. So it's important that we acknowledge the work that has already been done, the success that's already happening in our schools, and then we replicate that to ensure that we have a clear exit out of receivership. You're welcome.
Arlene, next question, number 4.
Yes. In your current or previous role, were there any missteps? What did you learn, and what would you do differently if selected for this position?
Absolutely. So I firmly believe in being honest, transparent, and vulnerable. And this is a vulnerable situation that I would like to describe. And I told this before, where in Texas we're going through some financial crisis where our school districts are missing some funding, and we had to think of different ways to find resources to keep our schools going. And so some of those conversations I had to lead with our community, and it was around closing schools so that we can recapture some of that funding. And so what I learned from that process was that we didn't come and talk to the community until the schools had been identified. And we came before them to say, here are the options that we have. We have school A, B, C, and D, and so these are the potential impacts, and so on and so forth. Well, by that time, I realized that we had missed the most important component of communicating to the community, was identifying the problem first and being open and transparent and vulnerable to say, we find ourselves in this situation now. These are potential things we're thinking of. What is your, what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? And what is the best way that you think we should move forward? And perhaps the option of closing schools would have never been on the plate, but because we didn't engage our community at the onset of the issue, we missed the opportunity to explore different views and different avenues, and do some research about how other cities had handled similar situations. And so my learning from that process was, as soon as we identify an issue, a challenge, a barrier, that we be transparent about it, bring it to the forefront, and be vulnerable to say, in complex situations, we don't have a way forward because it's a complex problem. Now, would have been a complicated problem, there's a methodology to fixing complicated problems. But when it's complex, it takes vulnerability to come and say, we need the best thinkers, we need the best ideas, and we need the latest research to find a way forward that's in the best interest of all our stakeholders in our community. So if I had to do it again, I would start by identifying the problem and be very clear and transparent with our community from the onset, rather than show up with already options for them.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
Juana,
Alma,
number
for that.
5.
Yeah, thank you, Alma, for that response. And just for clarity, you mentioned in that question, the transparency and bringing in stakeholders earlier on, but you mentioned a financial crisis. Was that
Correct.
something you inherited, or something, how did the budget get to a point where there was a deficit and we needed to close schools?
Sure, absolutely. So when I first got to Pflugerville in 2019, we were a fast-growing district. So we had some monies allocated by the governor for fast-growing districts. And so we really had a good, hefty fund balance. And so what happened after that, when COVID hit, we lost enrollment. We lost so much enrollment that we weren't able to recapture what was lost through enrollment. And aside from that, we also had charter schools take advantage of the fact that our kids were in COVID and started having charter schools around our district, which, had a lot of our families go and enroll there. And so to compound that, our governor decided to then as you know, changed some of the funding policies that impacted districts. And so right now, if you read the headlines in Texas, that is what we're fighting, that our governor recognizes the need of our districts, right? And because there's a debate whether public schools or charter schools. And so right now, we are facing that debacle of how do we keep our kiddos so that we can have the funding to keep our schools running and not lose them to charter schools and so on and so forth. And so another layer to that is we're experiencing the ESSER cliff. And so as you know, from those monies of the ESSER cliffs that we were able to use to acquire the resources for our students in regards to social emotional supports, trauma, counselors, and so on and so forth. Now we're losing that, and so you can just imagine trying to do and provide the same quality of resources with very minimal funding.
Thank you. I have question 6. Over the past several years, LPS has adopted high-quality and culturally relevant curriculum materials across our schools. What experience do you have in leading district-level professional development tied to curriculum implementation? How would you tackle this issue in a district that values school autonomy?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, it's important for us to understand the community that we serve and the students, who are our families. And so when we understand who our families are and our students are, then we're better poised to address their needs. But it's not until we understand the cultural component that comes with our students and our families that we're able to serve them at a deeper level. Now, to do that, I will tell you that we have engaged our leaders in cultural competence leadership, where they've been able to acquire those skills and knowledges of how is it that our Latino students operate, what are their beliefs, what are their practices, what are their celebrations, and how do they function as a family unit, right? And so when we bring this awareness to our leadership and to our teachers, then they're better able to understand the stories that come with our students, their challenges at home, and how we can better present ourselves to them. And so cultural competence is really important also in how we identify and purchase curriculum and resources, because it is important that our Latino students see themselves in what they see, what they read, and in how they experience the world. And there's a gap in that currently, right? Where when they're viewing television, they see themselves in roles that are not celebrating their culture or highlighting their assets. Or when they're reading books, they often don't identify with the characters or the settings or how things are being described. And so it's important that as a district, when we choose curriculum and resources, that it is aligned with the culture of our students and that it enhances and leverages those funds of knowledge and their assets so that they can see themselves in this and they can recognize their value, but at the same time have a connection and be meaningful to them. Because when you do choose a curriculum that's not aligned to their needs, to their culture, to their language, then you're missing a whole opportunity to develop the child and really engage with the learning.
What
Edgar?
what are the important considerations you have for establishing yourself as the LPS superintendent in your first 100 days and determining the top priorities for the year based on what you've learned about the district? Additionally, how do you go about building and creating connections in communities a community that may be new to you?
Sure. So Edgar, I've been thinking about that question for quite a while, and also in how I would want to present myself as I came into Lawrence. And what I've done is I've really taken notice of what the community shared during the superintendent process. And so there was a conversation of certain things that the superintendent needed to do within the first 5 years for the superintendent to be successful. And some of those points were they wanted a superintendent who was visible and present and who had cultural awareness. They also wanted a principal who recognized the social-emotional needs of our students in our community. And they wanted a superintendent who would provide opportunities for our students to engage in after-school enrichment and extracurricular activities. And so from a lot of the things that I read and I saw, and what the community feedback meant was that I needed to be able to show up, one, to acknowledge that I am an outsider and that I would come in to build relationships with them and understand the community more by interacting with them and taking time to take a deeper dive into their desires and understanding their thoughts. So I would like to do that by being present and measure my success by the survey results and how they see me interacting with them throughout the years, and have those measures be an indication of whether or not I'm meeting their desires. And then secondly, social-emotional support for our students or communities. That's something that I've mentioned at a minimum. What I would like to do is develop a resource map, but also dive into what exactly does that mean, and how can we better prepare our systems to support that, and what are we doing now that's working well and what is not, and how can we tweak and adjust some of those things to ensure that we're meeting the goals of the community. And then lastly, opportunities. Student experiential experiences of utmost importance for me, because when we provide students with hands-on real-world experiences, they're more likely to show up to school every day. They're encouraged, they're engaged, they're motivated to know that what we're teaching them is really connected to a skill that they're going to use in their present lives and prepare them for the future. And so, again, I'll tell you that my mind works in a linear pathway. And so I'm thinking about what are those action steps that I would take within the 30 days, 90 days, 100 days, and so on and so forth. And so if my goal is to be present, and my goal is to respond to the community's social-emotional needs, and my goal is to provide opportunities for enrichment and after-school care and whatnot, then I would have to design measurable goals along the way within a 1-year span or 30 days or 3-month span, so that I can provide to you and hold myself accountable to the board and to the community that I am doing the work that was asked of the community. So a really intentionality in the work, being very cognizant of what the committee is asking for and has asked during the superintendent process, and not lose sight of that. It is important to keep it at the forefront of the work.
Thank you.
Mayor DePena?
Good evening. What make you the best person for superintendent, the school public school?
What makes me the best candidate for the superintendency of the Lawrence Public School System is my experience working with communities very similar to Lawrence. Not only that, having a cultural, competent leadership style that understands the funds of knowledge and the assets of our students makes me a prime candidate to ensure that we provide the opportunities to our students to be successful. And so I will tell you that through this work, it's important that that I build on the experiences of collaboration, of partnership, of honest, transparent, and vulnerable communication, and that we engage in this work collaboratively and not in an isolated pathway where, there's a one sole person making decisions, but rather seeing myself as the person who represents the voices of our students, our teachers, and our leaders of the community, and also advocate for them and never forget that in the spaces that I show up, I am representing them. And lastly, be that liaison that they need to obtain the resources for them to be successful. And so I feel that these qualities, along with my visionary and innovative tendency to look towards the future and have this positive approach of how we can get things done and we can set up our students with 21st century skills and also worldwide savvy skills, if you will, and knowledge will set up students to be very competitive students and reach an unparamount potential.
One at a time.
Yeah, so we're doing really good with time. Thank you so much, Alma, for your response on that. We have another 15 minutes, Madam Chair, so we could take some additional questions, and I'd love to start. Alma, I don't know if you know, but the community of Lawrence is predominantly Dominican,
Yes.
largely Spanish-speaking. I'm positive that your past experience has shed light and spotlighted the importance of parent engagement. How comfortable do you feel speaking Spanish and engaging our parents, engaging our students, and focusing our curriculum on dual language?
I feel very comfortable communicating in Spanish, and that was my native language growing up. And so I would tell you that I didn't become bilingual, bicultural, and biliterate by design. It was by chance. My parents navigated Mexico and the U.S., so I attended schools in Mexico, and I also attended schools in the United States, so I was able to develop that language. Back in the 80s, you didn't have a dual language program, a bilingual program. It was sink or swim, and consequently, because of that, my assets were overseen, and sadly to say, I was retained in third grade because of it. And so I chose at that time to see that as a way for me to be an advocate for Spanish-speaking students and our families. And since then, I've never forgotten the importance of the Spanish language. So I feel really comfortable communicating in Spanish. Now, sometimes I will tell you my EL brain will miss a word, and I'll say, me siento muy excited, or something to that extent. But other than that, know that I feel very confident talking to our communities. In regards to bilingual programs, I will tell you, and I'll be very transparent, Ms. Matias, that every bilingual program has its requirements, and it has a goal that each of those programs meet. And so I don't want to sit here and say I prefer one program over the other. It's my positionality right now to come before you and say I will bring you all of the searches and research that's out there in regards to bilingual programs, whether it's early exit, one-way, two-way, and late exit, so that the whole community has a really good knowledge and understanding of what each of those dual language program calls for. Ultimately, being a bilingual student myself, I will support any dual language program that the community teachers and students choose, and support it wholeheartedly. But I will refrain from making any decisions because it's not up to me. I truly believe in the collaborative approach of having the most important stakeholders at the table, which is our teachers, our leaders, and our students, making those decisions and letting them know that whatever decision is made, I fully support them and will back them up no matter what. And so parent engagement for me is important because My family had a different way of engaging with schools, and every family has a different way, and that's not to say that they're not engaged because they don't want to or because they don't have the opportunities, but just because of the dynamics of having to work two jobs and so on and so forth, it can be very different for each family. And so I don't have a preconceived notion that parent engagement should look one way, but rather it's a varied of ways as long as we have a two-way communication and get the information to our parents where they can respond to us and we can respond to them in a timely manner. I would like to explore opportunities for every parent to have different ways to get engaged and not just one particular way to do it.
Thank you. That concludes our questioning for this evening. Do you have any questions for us?
I do. I do have questions for you. Is there any hesitation of hiring someone from Texas?
I think only if the Texan can support them or could adjust to the snow.
Yeah. No, kidding aside, what are you looking for in the next superintendent of Lawrence?
Anybody want to take a stab?
All right.
Go ahead, Eileen.
Certainly. I believe that the next superintendent, aside from the cultural sensitivity, to be able to, like you said, be present, to be there, not behind, in the ivory tower, how I like to call it. Somebody that's going to roll up their sleeves, somebody that understands that not all families look the same. Everybody has a story, and that superintendent is able to understand each individual story and not discard it.
Thank you, Arlene, for that. I would like to piggyback on what you said. So throughout my interactions with the groups that I talked to, there's beautiful stories to be told, and there's beautiful stories to be shared. And the way that we communicate our story of what the great things that are happening in Lawrence with the amazing things that our teachers are doing, the way that our students are showing up, and the work that's been done has to be told. And so, if chosen to be the next superintendent, I would like to tap into ways that we can showcase the great work that Lawrence is doing and how we can tell that story so that it can be vibrant and known, and also build a community that's proud, and because there's a lot to be celebrated.
Thank you. That concludes our interview, but before we go, the mayor would like to give you something.
Okay, all right. What is it? A ver, ¿qué es?
Alma, just a quick note, we plan on making a decision by next week, next Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I will turn on the candles and pray for all of you and myself.
All right, could I have a motion to take a 10-minute recess?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Maria, please call the roll.
Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Yes, please.
Edgar De Leon,
Yes.
Arlene Garcia,
Yes.
Juana Matias,
Yes.
Maria Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian De Peña,
Yes.
Chair Patricia Mariano.
Yes. We are in recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, we're ready to begin. Could I have a motion to come out of recess?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Maria, please call the roll.
Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Present.
Edgar de Leon,
Present.
Arlene Garcia,
Present.
Juana Matias,
Present.
Maria Muller,
Present.
Mayor Brian de Peña, Chair Patricia Mariano.
Present. Good evening, Dr. Timothy Sipple, and welcome to our interview process this evening.
Thank you.
My name is Patricia Mariano, and I am the chairperson of the Lawrence Alliance for Education. I started my career in Lawrence, where I was a teacher, assistant principal, and currently serve as an elected school committee member as well. We thank you for spending these 2 days in our district, hearing from students, parents, community members, teachers, support staff, school leaders, and district administrators. In your final interview with us, the members of the LAE want to learn a bit more about you now that we have you in person. The LAE also has access to the previous interview notes and videos as well for your reference, as well as your references. We have 45 minutes, so please expect us to spend about 5 or 6 minutes on each question. Warner at the end of the table is our timekeeper to ensure we have time at the end for you to ask us questions. Before we begin, I would like the LAE members to introduce themselves briefly, sharing their name and their role, connection to the Lawrence community, and we'll start over on my extreme right.
Good evening. My name is Edgar De Leon. I'm currently the Chief Equity Officer at the Noble and Greeno School, private school down in Dedham. But before then, I was a teacher here at the Lawrence High School and director of upper bound math science for students in Lawrence. And also, I was a student in Lawrence Public Schools. So welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. Hola.
Hola.
My name is Dolores Calaf. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, but I am a resident of Lawrence now for 33 years. In many years, I have been involved in education, and particularly in early childhood education. And through that process, I have worked with different colleges, not only in teaching, but also through looking for partnerships. And in fact, I was a regional director for Cambridge College here in Lawrence for 5 years. And it is an honor to have you here as a candidate, and we hope that is a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Brian de Peña, alcalde de la ciudad de Lawrence. Vivo en ella por los últimos 34 años de mi vida. Tengo mis negocios aquí, tengo mi vida aquí, mis hijos. 2 de ellos se graduaron de la Lawrence High School y espero que podamos tener una buena comunicación esta noche.
Gracias. Muchísimas gracias.
Hi, Tim. This is Arlene Garcia. I am a parent liaison for Lawrence Family Development Charter School. I have lived in Lawrence approximately 20-somewhat years. Prior to Lawrence Family Development, I also was in a similar role at Salem Academy in Salem, Mass. Looking forward to tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maria Gonzalez Moller, and I have worked in the community of Lawrence for about 31 years. I am currently leading a large nonprofit where I've been for the last 31 years myself, and I now lead that, focused on early childhood education and enrichment programming for Lawrence children.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Welcome to Lawrence. As you know, my name is Juana Matias. I currently serve as the HUD New England Regional Administrator for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Before my time there, I was a state representative for this very district where the majority of my legislation focused on our public education system, and also served as a chief operating officer for MassInc, a nonpartisan think tank that advanced a lot of initiatives around public education, particularly early college. Delighted to learn more about you. I know I had the opportunity to interview you previously, and looking forward to having a conversation tonight.
Thank you.
So now you've met us, and Edgar is ready to start with our first question.
Good evening again, and welcome. We have read the materials and video from your prior interviews, and are excited to learn more about your skills and background today. My question is, can you please tell us about a student who impacted your career in education? Who was that person, and how did that person impact your leadership today?
Thank you. So I've been in education for 33 years, so there's a lot of students. One student immediately comes to mind, though. Early 90s, I was teaching as a bilingual teacher in South Los Angeles, and I had a student, both him and his younger sister. He was in 3rd grade, she was in 2nd grade, and they were both in my classroom. And had a great year with them. I got to know their family. The father invited me over to their place to have lunch with the family, and did that. Had a very nice visit with them, and continued to have a good relationship with them for the whole year. Then sometime in the early fall of the following year, they disappeared, and we didn't know what happened to them. And then I think it was the following year when the young man was a 5th grader, they came back. And he was very angry, and he was very, he wasn't my student any longer, but I could tell he was having a hard time in school. And sometime that fall, if I'm not mistaken, I received a letter from his father, who was in prison, and there had been some family trauma. There had been an incident that took place, and his father was no longer with them. And in the letter, he pleaded with me to look after his kids and to help his wife and his mother, who was living with them, to try to help them. And so I started having them come into my classroom, and they were doing their homework in my classroom after school. And after a while, then I started going with the mother to IEP meetings to sit in on those. And then when he started middle school, he would get in trouble quite a bit because he was having so much difficulty adjusting. And the dean would walk the student down to my classroom so that I could talk with them. And what I share about all of that is that I just developed a tremendous amount of empathy for, first of all, just the challenges that families go through in communities like South Los Angeles, whether it's domestic abuse or poverty, or if it's other challenges that families have. I just had a much, much closer in-person view of what those challenges were. And before I was married and before I had my own children, here I was the surrogate father of a 13-year-old. And worked with him as a mentor, and he and his sister ended up both being a groomsman and a bridesmaid in our wedding. He did graduate from high school. He did some community college, but he's currently working at the University of California in different capacities, and he has 2 little girls of his own, and I'm still in relationship with him. But that experience of really walking through all of those difficulties with them, and really also just learning to appreciate, here is this young man, in spite of all those challenges, who was just a great person. And he didn't ask for all those things to happen to him. He didn't ask for the different challenges that he had in terms of his disabilities, or definitely didn't ask for what happened with his family. But he needed someone to advocate for him. He needed someone to support him. And I learned through that there are many students who lack that kind of person in their lives, and we have to make sure our system doesn't rely on, and I wasn't a hero, I was just asked to help, and I did. But it doesn't rely on exceptional teachers going above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that our students have what they need to thrive.
Thank you.
All right, our second question is from Arlene.
Okay, Tim, please share how you have addressed the components of early childhood development in your current or previous experience with a population similar to ours in Lawrence Public Schools.
how you propose to integrate and address early childhood initiatives in our district.
Thank you. So the earliest age I've ever taught was first grade, and I was already much, much taller than the first graders. I may have substitute taught at kindergarten a couple times. And I have never been a preschool teacher. All that's not true. For a number of years, I was in our church in California, I was a Sunday school teacher, and I always had the littlest ones, so I stand corrected. But as far as early childhood initiatives, that's something that is, I know here in Lawrence, you're a few years into the Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative in integrating preschool programs offered from the district directly with programs that are offered by other community partners. In Worcester, where I currently work, that we're in the planning stages for that initiative, so I don't have direct experience with that yet. However, what I would do here in Lawrence would really be to learn the current status of the program, how many students are involved, how many students are attending preschool programs offered directly by the district, and then how many students are enrolled in programs offered by community partners, and to really be able to assess what is the current access. Are there students who are still on waiting lists, waiting to be served by these programs, which are so critical to preparing them for elementary school? And if so, what are the partnerships that could be expanded in order to provide those opportunities for students? And then, in addition to access, really looking at working with the agencies and working with our current district staff also to assess the effectiveness of it. Like everything, even preschool can be on a continuous development cycle to make sure that it's not only providing students a place to be that's safe and nurturing, but a place where they're also growing and they're learning. And so just really, there are indicators and rubrics for assessing the quality of programs to really engage with partners and engage with our district staff to assess how effective the programs are. Thank you.
Maria, number 3.
Thank you. Given the receivership status in Lawrence Public Schools, how would you work with the community, both internal and external partners, to create a path to local control while not jeopardizing student outcomes?
Okay, thank you. So I shared with several of the panels that I spoke with earlier today that I know that there are a lot of really, really committed, hardworking teachers and administrators, in addition to all the families that are supporting the students here and community leaders who've been working really hard during the last 12 years of receivership. And so whether it was, has that label on it, receivership, and whether the state is the one who's made this arrangement necessary, there's still hard work that's been going on, and a lot of good has happened. One thing I shared with the principals when I met with them earlier today is that when you look at the number of students who are meeting and exceeding standards on the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System, it's not what we want it to be. If we want all of our students to have the option to go to college if they want to, or to do whatever they'd like to do after college, there are certain skills that are going to be really, really critical for them to have. However, there is a lot of growth happening. And if you look at the average growth, particularly in the elementary schools here, they're right at about the 50th percentile, which means that they're growing well. And there are some schools where that growth percentile is significantly higher than the 50th percentile. So to your point, there are things we don't want to just throw out as we're transitioning to local control. And the way I see it, it'd be really necessary, just like any new leader coming into any district would be to really get a sense from staff, from community, from families, from leadership in the city. What are the things that you see that are working really well? What are the things that have been a part of the initiatives for the last 12 years that you feel are really, really, really important that we want to hold on to. And there are going to be different opinions about that. And then what are the things that you think need to be tweaked? What are the things that need to be adjusted in order to be more effective? What are the things that need to be set aside because we don't think that they've been effective? And what are things that we need to start doing that have not yet been attempted? That conversation needs to involve as many stakeholders as possible so that, and I guess my hunch is that there are a lot of things that have been in implementation of these last 12 years that people are likely to say, hey, this is working, let's give this more time, let's see this through, let's not upset the apple cart just to have something different or new in place. But that has to be a really inclusive process, and with you all as the board, with the mayor, with the overall leadership in the city, and then most importantly with students, with teachers, with parents, people who are really directly affected by these things and what their experience of their current district operations and practices is so that we can assess what needs to change.
Thank you.
Arlene?
Yes.
Number 4?
Thank you. In your current or previous role, were there any missteps? What did you learn, and what would you do differently if selected for this position?
So I'm a human being. In 33 years of education career, there are lots of missteps. Okay, I'll choose one. From my first year as high school principal, this was 12 years ago, the person who was in charge of secondary education in our district had been in my ear talking about how, in his opinion, physics should have been the first course that students take in high school, conceptual physics, not calculus-based physics, but conceptual physics. Because the language load of physics was not as rigorous, not as difficult as biology has become in the current day and age. And I had other folks telling me the same thing, and I was reading articles about this. And as I was getting ready to start my first year as principal, I think there were 6 science teachers in that building, and 2 of them announced their resignations because one was going to medical school and another one was taking a job at a nonprofit. And I thought, well, here's the opportunity. We could do physics first. And that summer, interviewed physics. We advertised physics positions, and the chief academic officer said, "Are you sure?" And the chief of human resources said, "Are you sure?" Yes, this is going to be great. And it didn't turn out so great. And it wasn't so much because physics isn't a good course for 9th grade, because at the school where both of my sons attended, they do conceptual physics, and there's an MCAS for physics in 9th grade that's not calculus-based, it's a good course. And at my old school in California, because of the new next generation science standards that they've adopted, they decided to do physics in 9th grade. It's okay, it's not a bad idea, but you have to do it the right way. You have to have the right staff in place. You have to make sure that they're trained and that they understand what teaching this content to 9th graders is like relative to what they might be used to, which is teaching it to 11th or 12th graders, which was more the custom. And then also make sure that the instructional materials are properly aligned, and making sure that teachers are really involved in that decision. And that's the most important thing, that the decision I made is a unilateral decision, and that is not something that's a mistake that I have not made since. Because it's really important make sure that you've got the support of district leadership, and they supported me. They give me the benefit of the doubt, but make sure you really have their support and that they're supportive of the idea, but then also making sure that the teachers who are actually going to be implementing it also agree that this is a good idea and that they've had adequate time to plan and prepare to execute it well.
Thank you. Juana?
Thank you for your response, Timothy. My question is as follows. Can you tell us about a time when you developed or inherited a plan and determined that it needed to change? What steps did you take to implement those changes?
Thank you for the question. We had, before I was principal of that high school, we were in a position where the school board had voted 7-0 to reconstitute the school and require all of the teachers and the administration, everyone who worked at that school, to reapply for their jobs. And I was appointed as kind of an assistant principal on special assignment. I was the one person who didn't have to reapply because I hadn't worked there previously. And I was tasked with facilitating a planning process to get everybody on board to plan what the school was going to look like, even though they didn't know they were going to be able to work there. And I shared with the teachers earlier today that amazingly, I got them to engage in that process, even though they didn't know that they were going to have a job at that school. One of the things that we did on a very tight timeline, because I think we planned all of this in about 6 months, was to start with a freshman academy where there were 3 career-themed academies for grades 10 through 12, and then 1 freshman academy that all the freshmen would be in one building, and it was going to be great. And for that school, for that population, for the enrollment that size, and for the resources that we had at our disposal, it didn't go so well. And also because a lot of the teachers who were in that freshman academy were newer teachers and did not have the skill set to really work well with 9th grade students. And you had all of them in one spot. I had a chance to tour Lawrence High School today and see things in action there. It's very different from what it would look like at my high school back in 2008, 9, 10. But what we decided to do was to make a shift from that freshman academy and integrate those 9th graders into the other 3 academies. And the advantage was that there was a more diverse group of students with more maturity who could be mentors to those students. There was a broader, more diverse group of teachers also that were working with them, not the least experienced teachers, but teachers who had more veteran status and had more experience working with all students. And those students got access to the career technical education element of those academies at an earlier age without having to wait until 10th grade, which was really critical to get them to have exposure to those careers and get them buy-in to the academy rather than have them in this waiting period for a year before they got involved with the career-themed academies, which were engineering, business and entrepreneurship, and arts, entertainment, and media. So that was an example. But throughout that process, the final point I would just say is learning. Actually, this was before I became principal, but one thing that we did effectively in that instance was to really engage with the teachers who had planned the previous scenario, and then, because they agreed that there were problems, that it wasn't working, and to really engage them in a process of defining what the curriculum was going to look like for the 9th graders in the other 3 academies, what the processes were going to be for the students to choose their academies in an earlier age rather than wait until the end of 9th grade. All of those things were decisions that we made in a collaborative way.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I have question 6. Over the past several years, LPS has adopted high-quality and culturally relevant curriculum materials across our schools. What experience do you have in leading district-level professional development tied to curriculum implementation? How would you tackle this issue in a district that values school autonomy?
Thank you. So in my current role in Worcester Public Schools, we are in the first full year of implementation of a new English language arts curriculum, Amplify CKLA, which I understand many of the schools in Lawrence currently use. And I think you're a little bit ahead of us in terms of implementation. I guess what I would say is that any time that there's a new curriculum, one thing that was really important in adopting that curriculum in Worcester in the first place was in seeing all of the curriculum that were highly rated by the state as options to implement the science of reading and to give classroom teachers, administrators, the opportunity to review those materials and give their opinions about which of the curricula they thought would best meet the students' needs in the district. And then over a course of a few months, narrowed those options down to 2 that were piloted in multiple classrooms at 2 different grade levels in schools across the district. And then we got teacher feedback about those programs and how they worked, and also looked at the results of students as they responded to those 2 curricula. And then ultimately decided on Amplify CKLA. In my current role, I work really closely with principals to observe instruction, to troubleshoot, to hear from them what things are working, what things have gone smoothly, which things are more difficult. There's a multidisciplinary team for the area of the district that I supervise also that works really closely with the instructional coaches and the administrators in each of those buildings to make sure the teachers have the support that they need, in addition to a curriculum liaison at the district who supports literacy. And really just as we look at data, we are looking at school by school, sitting down with the principal and looking at their data and bringing tools to them to work with their teachers on how to look at their classroom level results and determine and compare notes with teachers in the same grade level. Who's doing well, who's needs support, what in this same grade level with the same student population, some students seem to be growing more than other students. Why? What's happening there? And what adjustments need to be made in order to see that growth more broadly? Could you ask the last part of the question again, please?
Sure. How would you tackle this issue in a district that values school autonomy?
Well, I know that in Lawrence, the non-negotiable, if you will, is to make sure that we're teaching literacy in accordance with the science of reading and using evidence-based strategies. And then the materials that are being used, I believe it's mostly Amplify CKLA, but I believe there's at least one school that's using Wonders or another curriculum. And I think at the end of the day, it really has to come back to the data and has to come back to results, because we are responsible, I'm responsible as a superintendent, you're responsible as a governing board to make sure that all students are learning how to read. And if we're seeing that one approach or one set of materials seems to be not getting results, or the way it's being implemented perhaps is not getting the results we want, then there has to be a conversation of whether those materials are appropriate or not. I think that I do believe that school autonomy is a powerful strategy. As a principal, I greatly valued my autonomy, and there were times where I had a supervisor who I did not trust to tell me to do it a better way. And yet, there needs to be conversation and shared accountability for results that the district is able to bring to the school and be able to have conversations about what's working, what's not working, and make adjustments as needed.
Well, thank you for that. Edgar, number 7.
What are the important considerations you have for establishing yourself as the LPS superintendent in the first 100 days and determining the top priorities for the year based on what you've learned about the district? Additionally, how would you go about building and creating connections in a community that you're new to, or potentially new to?
Thank you. So, as I understand, the position starts July 1. And so July 1 to August 15th, let's just say, those first 45 days is a time when schools are not in session. Maybe there's summer schools, some summer programs, but by and large, most of the schools are not in session the way they are during the regular school year. And I think the most important priority for me would be to use that time to establish really strong trusting relationships with you. And in particular, you, Señor de Peña, Señor Alcalde. I mean, honestly, that to make sure that we are on the same page, that we have a unified vision of what we're wanting to achieve in the first year, let's just say, for what that process of discerning what the governance structure of the district will look like. And I realize that it's a larger conversation than just the LAE, but it's an important conversation. And we would need to have a really solid foundation of trust in order to move the district forward in the midst of that transition, and in order to make sure that the day-to-day operations of the schools can move forward without any disruption while all of that conversation is taking place. Another priority would be to develop very strong, trusting, productive relationships with each of the principals and with the district leadership team. I would want to make sure that the first day of school for 2024-2025 goes smoothly. In everyone that I had a chance to meet with today, teachers, administrators, the central office team, you have a lot of great people in this district. And I don't have any reason to doubt that things won't be ready for the first day of school. But if there's any hiccups, I'll be the one with whom the buck stops. And so I want to make sure that things are ready to go. And I want, and in so doing also, better understand the systems of the district, how things work, how things are designed, who reports to whom, how things are planned, what the rhythms of work really are, and establish rapport with as many employees and as many leaders within the district as possible. And then I think the other would be to really learn from each of you and to learn from others in the district. And I've started talking to people, even though, because I wanted to know more about the district over the last couple of months as I was considering applying for this position, and as I got excited about applying for the position, and then as I got further into the process, really wanted to know as much as I could. But really wanting to know from you your guidance and your advice of how to best engage the greatest number of people possible during the summer when the schools are not in session. And who are some critical people, elected officials, state delegation, local business leaders, nonprofit leaders, who are the people that would be, especially during the summer when there's more time and the day-to-day operations of the schools are not as intense, who are those people that would be good to talk to? And then through them, be able to engage and get to know as many families as possible, get to see our students who might be involved in summer employment opportunities or summer programs or internships or whatever it might be, just to really get to know as many people as possible before the start of the school year. So that's the first 45, 50 days, but and then going into the school year, just trusting that that will give some momentum so that as conversations get more clear about what the governance structure of the district will be going forward, that those relationships that we've been able to establish at the outset will serve us well, and we'll be able to continue to work together in a productive way.
Thank you.
Mayor, number 8.
What made you the best superintendent for Lawrence Public School?
All right. So I've mentioned before I have 33 years in public education. And in 33 years, with the exception of 3 years that I was in graduate school, the other 30 years, I've worked in 3 districts: Los Angeles, Pasadena, and Worcester. I'm not a person who jumps around a lot. And as a matter of principle, I've chosen to work in districts where students really rely on public education to create opportunities for them. And also districts that are diverse and that have a very large number of families who speak Spanish, para que pueda servir esa comunidad. I'm also a leader who is collaborative, inclusive. I learned my lesson from 9th grade physics. And so I have deep respect for the leadership of the community, but I also have deep respect for the educators who are working every day with our students and with the families who are relying on us to do right by them. I'm a man of integrity, a man of commitment, and you'll get the very best from me every single day.
Thank you. Juana, how are we fixed on time?
We're doing well with time. We have an approximate 11 minutes, so up to you, Chair. I know we had an additional specific question for Timothy, if you wanted to ask him that.
All right, I'll take this question.
Great.
Can you share strategies and your approach for establishing trust and fostering meaningful relationships in new communities?
Yes. So I think the most important thing about establishing trust just in general is listening. And really listening to people and being curious about how they see the world, why they see the world that way, and why they've made choices that they've made. I'll give two examples. When I became principal of the high school where I was principal, I had been an assistant principal there, but a lot of people in the community who were not directly affiliated with the school weren't necessarily paying attention to that. All they knew is, all of a sudden, here's this guy who's the principal of their community school, and who is he, and what's he going to do? This was a school where there was just tremendous alumni pride in the school. It was a school that was 65% Latino, 35% African American, and so the civil rights community in that district was also very concerned about the welfare of those students, and they didn't know me very well either. And even some school committee members who had not really followed my career or didn't know me very well were not totally sure the superintendent had made the right call when he appointed me. And so with each of those constituencies and with each of those groups, I made it a point to reach out to them and to schedule time. And I asked in the case of that school community, asked one of the school board members who was involved with a civil rights organization locally for Latinos, the opportunity to sit with him and to talk with him. The NAACP also just reached out to their, through friends of friends of friends, made outreach to them and arranged time to get to know them and build relationship with them. We had a city councilor who was an alumna of the school, and when she decided not to run for re-election, another alumnus from the school took her place. And so there was that kind of community. And so I really successfully reached out to those people and established working relationships with them. And if there was something happening at the school that might raise concern, they had a channel to communicate with me directly, and I also communicated with them. In Worcester, it was really difficult at first because I started working there in July 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, and so everything was shut down. When I went to pick my computer up at the district office, they left it on a table and then went in the other room, and then I picked it up. It was that kind of a situation. And so everything was on Zoom. Everything was on Zoom. However, what I did that summer safely, with masks, 6 feet distance, was begin visiting schools and visiting principals. And we would walk the buildings together, the empty buildings, and get to know, I would get to know them, they would get to know me, I'd learn about their school and how long they've been working there, and I did that school by school. At the time, that year, I supervised 16 schools, and so I got to do that 16 times with 16 leaders. And then begin also to meet with the university vice president, the vice president at the community college, at folks from other nonprofits that were working in the city, a lot of it by Zoom, because that's what I was limited to, but slowly but surely begin to build relationships with those folks. And then 2 years in, the structure of the district changed, and I worked with a K-12 feeder pattern, and I had a new group of principals to begin engaging with. And same thing, really just respecting them, assuring them that I wanted to be a thought partner with them, and beginning to build relationship with them by listening to their concerns, listening to their ideas, and then sharing feedback in a way that was appropriate. So in both of those cases, very different communities, but I know what it's like to enter into a place where I'm an outsider. I know what it's like to enter in a place where folks are very proud of their community and are not totally sure about this person who wants to come in and be a leader. But I know what it's like to be a servant, what it's like to be humble. I know what it means to be a listener. And by doing things that way, I am able to collaborate and build partnerships with people that make a difference.
Thank you. That concludes our portion of the questions. Now we'd like to give you an opportunity to ask us any questions you might have.
Pues muchas preguntas y la mayoría se me van a ocurrir después. Just a lot of questions, and a lot of them are going to come to me on the way home. I asked this question to another panel earlier today. You asked me a question about receivership, and you asked me a question about the transition. I guess I would also be curious to ask you, and señor alcalde, si puede ser, how do you see the timeline of things potentially playing out in terms of at what point will decisions be made about the governance structure of the district beyond receivership? And how do you perceive the superintendent can be most useful in that process of making those determinations and providing input or not, helping to manage the district while those decisions are being made? Y lo puedo, no sé, ¿está bien?
Yeah. I think the more important for my administration is continue, work together and keep transparency in any process, in the future process, and keep the student first, and keep the political issue outside, in the side, or maybe behind.
Amen.
Because in the past, that makes a lot of damage to the system. And I'm waiting in case the committee take your name, was the superintendent, continue to support family, students, and teachers. Teachers need a lot of support, believe me, because in the past, political issues that make a lot of damage to the system. I think that's the more important.
Thank you. Any of the rest of you want to add to
Anything
that?
else?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. Thank you again for spending time with us. Our goal is to make a final decision by next week. And before you go, we have a little something from us that the mayor's going to present to you to thank you for being part of this process. Thank you. Best of luck to you.
Gracias a todos.
At this time, I'd entertain a motion to take a 10-minute recess.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Thank you. Maria, please call the roll.
Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Yes, yes.
Edgar de Leon.
Yes.
Arlene Garcia,
Yes.
Juana Matias,
Yes.
Maria Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian De Peña,
Yes.
Chair Patricia Mariano.
Yes. We are in recess. We have one more candidate. Thank you. Yep, Mia's here. Could I have a motion to come out of recess?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Maria, please call the roll.
Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Yes.
Edgar de Leon,
Present.
Arlene Garcia,
Yes.
Juana Matias.
Yes.
Maria Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian De Peña,
Yes.
Chair Patricia Mariano.
Yes, we are out of recess and in session. Our final candidate this evening is Ralph Carrero. Good evening and welcome. My name is Patricia Mariano, and I am the chairperson of the Lawrence Alliance for Education. I started my career in Lawrence, where I was a teacher, assistant principal, and currently serve as an elected school committee member as well. We thank you for spending these 2 days in our district, hearing from students, parents, community members, teachers, support staff, school leaders, and district administrators. In your final interview
Pat,
with us...
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but what's going on in this room is unacceptable, and I will not be a part of it. Yes, yes. We're going to treat all candidates equitably and with the same degree of respect.
Absolutely.
I would ask that that all members standing in the back, please refrain from
Thank you.
any demonstration.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. Yep.
Exactly.
All right, we will continue as soon as the room is cleared.
Thank you, Juana.
Thank you, Juana.
Of course.
Our apologies to you, Mr. Carrera. We thank you. We thank you for spending these 2 days in our district, hearing from students, parents, community members, teachers, support staff, school leaders, and district administrators. In your final interview with us, the members of the LAE want to learn a bit more about you now that we have you in person. The LAE also has access to the previous interview notes and videos as well as your references. We have 45 minutes, so please expect us to spend 5 to 6 minutes per question. Warner at the end of the table will serve as timekeeper to ensure that we have time at the end for you to ask any questions of us. Before we begin, I would like the LAE members to introduce themselves, briefly sharing their name, their role or connection to the Lawrence community. And we'll start on my extreme right.
Good evening. My name is Edgar De Leon. I'm currently the Chief Equity Officer at the Noble and Greeno School. Before that, I was a teacher in the Lawrence High School and was the director of Upper Bound program that served Lawrence students, and as well, I was a Lawrence Public School student. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, hola, I'm Dolores Calaf. I've been in this community now for 33 years, and I believe I met you around a few years after that, as I learned about, some of your work. And through the process of all the time that I began working in this community and in other places, I have done different things in education, community empowerment, but the one that really I feel passionate about is early education. And at some point, I was part of the board, and I believe that I learned a lot. And through my doctoral degree experience, I was able to see the difference that it makes. And that's why I am part of this governing. And I believe that this role that we have been looking for the candidate is extremely important to understand that the smaller we are, the bigger we are. Thank you.
Mayor?
Good evening. My name is Brian De Peña, Lawrence City Mayor. I live in the city of Lawrence for the last 34 years. I have my daughter, my son, Brian Jr., graduated to the Lawrence Public School. And my dream is in the future, every student take a bet about the Lawrence Public School education. That's more important for me. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Carrero. Thank you for being here. My name is Arlene Garcia. I currently work at Lawrence Family Development Charter School as a parent liaison. I've been in Lawrence approximately over 20 years. Prior to working at Lawrence Family Development, I also worked at Salem Academy in Salem, Mass. in a similar role. Welcome.
Maria Gonzalez Moller. I have been working in the community of Lawrence for about 31 years now, as part of a large nonprofit that I now lead, focused on early childhood education and enrichment programs for the students of Lawrence.
Buenas noches, Ralph. Juana Matias. Currently the New England HUD Regional Administrator. Before then, I was at Mass Inc. as Chief Operating Officer and also State Rep here. But most importantly, I'm an English language learner. I'm an immigrant, first-generation student, And as you can imagine, I know how critical education is in providing our students an opportunity to reach their full potential. We're delighted to have you here. Thank you for your graciousness as we began, and just looking forward to learning more about why you're interested in this role and what your vision is for the district.
Thank you. Thank you.
Edgar will lead off with our first question.
Good evening again, and welcome. We have read the materials and watched the video from your prior interviews and are excited to learn more about your skills and background today. Tell us about a student who impacted your career in education. Who was that person, and how did that person impact your leadership today?
Edgar, I got about 40 years experience, so I got a lot of students. And you just want one? Okay. Interesting question. So I've been superintendent for 17 years, and before that an administrator for 19 at the Greater Lawrence Technical High School. So it's safe to say that I've honed in on my skills and learned from my mistakes. And there's something to be said about age. With age, you obtain wisdom. But I got to go back into my memory banks. And I want to try to connect this with something that's even deeper. So in my early years, when I was at the technical school, my first position was the bilingual coordinator. And I was in charge of providing career technical education services to new students that were, and back then what they referred to it as transitional bilingual education. So those were English language learners, as we call them today. And I had a student that in the early 90s, late 80s, as the Dominican population from Lawrence was just starting to accelerate to its peak level, more and more people from around the Dominican Republic was coming. But more importantly, there were a lot of more people coming from the rural areas of the Dominican Republic. And when you come from the rural areas, sometimes schooling, you had to walk a long ways, or you bypassed going to school because you worked in the farm with your family, all right, because you had to make a living. We had a family that migrated to Lawrence, and the student wanted to come to the technical school. And it was a lot easier back then to get into the technical school. Anyhow, this student came to the school, and I was able to negotiate and have him placed in one of our programs, and it was the auto body program. And he was good with his hands. He couldn't speak a lick of English, and he needed a translator when he was in class. And any test that he took that was in English, 0 F. So he wasn't learning English. And I tried to negotiate with the teacher to allow to have his exams translated for him in Spanish so that he can take the test. You know what he got for a grade, Juana? 0. Yes. I didn't realize that we had a very illiterate student because his achievement grade coming out of the Dominican Republic was probably in the 2nd grade. I was able to work with the teacher in his shop because he had been a friend of mine, and he, lo and behold, when I was a kid, he was my neighbor, to allow for him to take a test that the teacher would develop that was hands-on, to be able to demonstrate the process of what it takes to take out a dent out of a car. He was able to do all of his trade skills extremely well. And he was able to go on each year and graduate from the technical school. Today, he was one of the first individuals that had a sandwich shop. I'm going to not say the corner of what street and what have you, because all you Laurentians would probably know where it is. But you know what the moral of the story is? I understood then why alternative assessments are important, especially for kids that are language minority students. And how I tie that in is that's why I believe that even though we have MCAS today to make sure that we level out the playing field, that kids can read and write, we also need to take a step back and look at MCAS and try to reassess how do we make it better for kids that don't have the opportunities. Because kids that take MCAS today have to take it in English. Why is it that they can't take it in Spanish with all the modern technology that we have? So one of the very first things that I learned, that it doesn't have to be paper and pencil, and it doesn't have to be in English. You can come up with different alternative assessments to measure skills that you teach kids today.
Thank you.
Arlene, thank you.
Mr. Guerrero, please share how you have addressed the components of early childhood development in your current or previous experience with a population similar, or our population here at Lawrence Public, how you propose to integrate and address early childhood initiatives in our district.
Thank you for that question. Let me go backwards. In my school district, we have a 2-year kindergarten program, and it's done purposely that we have a 2-year kindergarten program. The strategy is if you bring in kids at the 4-year-old level, and the legal age for kindergarten, normally state approved, is 5 years old. So if you expose kids to the 5-year-old curriculum at the 4-year-old level, you're going to have kids that are going to be able to master those skills. And when they get to kindergarten, you just accelerate curriculum. But more importantly, you can identify the 4-year-olds that were struggling, okay? That has been a very successful strategy for us. We replicated that in the Lawrence Public Schools through the Lawrence Public Academy when the first receiver was here and asked my school district to take on early childhood. So we replicated that and we created what today is called the Lawrence Public Academy. That's located where St. Augustine's School used to be, up on Tower Hill, okay? But more importantly, some of the professional development strategies and conversations we had regarding the 4-year-old program is that we had to make sure that the curriculum was culturally appropriate. Now, it's important to understand what one means by culturally appropriate. Culturally appropriate is giving kids lesson plans and curriculum for whatever normal 4 or 5-year-olds they should be. But you need to be able to make sure that you incorporate those strategies, how it might play out in their culture. Because then parents at home can work with kids. So if kids in school see the type of things and dolls and artifacts that you have, that you brought from your country, they're going to learn how to use that strategy of reading o deletrando las cosas en la casa. Okay, so that's what I mean by culturally sensitive. The other thing that why we created the 4-year-old program is because we needed to be able to identify early on any learning gaps. Learning gaps equals individual education plans. So kids coming in at kindergarten, you might not have had the opportunity to, with their daycares of where they're coming from, of have their IEPs, their individual learning plans, brought to the school district, so you're going to lose a lot of time. And you're going to try to be teaching a child that needs much more support services. So by having a 4-year-old program, you have that time to make sure that you're getting all the materials in a timely fashion for them to be able to make sure that you're providing the services. Lastly is the importance now, especially with second language learning and the universal WIDA standards that we have, that every teacher understands the strategy for teaching kids. So in my district, when teachers submit lesson plans, they also have to submit, as part of that lesson plan, the framework, the standard, and the strategy used for second English language immersion. Because early on, kids are sponges. and they learn very, very quickly. But you miss the opportunity to be able to thoroughly and authentically assess kids if you don't make sure that you're capturing all of the different learning modalities and the language development aspect of it.
Maria?
Thank you. Given the receivership status in Lawrence Public Schools, how would you work with the community, both internal and external partners, to create a path to local control while not jeopardizing student outcomes?
Very hot topic, and then you ask it as a question for candidates. Interesting. I don't believe that the learning aspect of kids will be interrupted. The receivership issue deals with governance. And I know that there has been disagreement in what level and what style. The role of the superintendent is to provide advice, to provide research, and to provide data to the stakeholders. In this particular case, the stakeholders are your elected officials. So the elected officials are the ones that are going to have to come up with the plan of what the best plan is for governance structure of the school committee, we'll call it. I know that there has been conversations of a nominated and then confirmed school board and appointed school board. There has been an elected school board. There has been an all-parent school board. And there has been now conversations about a hybrid board. I think that the role of the superintendent, because we're still in receivership, is to be able to provide guidance and conversation to the Department of Education as to how the process is going and if there are any hang-ups there. My role as a superintendent in the district is because of my level of experience in dealing with different types of governing boards, I can provide input and suggestions as to which ones work, how many members should be on a board. Too many sometimes is too many. I've worked and served on boards with 21 individuals, and unless you have a lot of subcommittees, you ain't getting any work done, okay? I know that we've talked about, and I've heard conversations about a parent board versus an elected board, but the research demonstrate that there truly isn't any clear pathway for a board, if it was all parents, that you're going to be much more effective. I think that the bottom line that has to happen with whichever way the community goes with what the governing body is, that there has to be truly dedicated professional development opportunities to help boards understand what their roles are. Since they reformed education back in '93, they stripped school committees from most of their work. So now I think there's only 4 or 5 pieces that they're responsible for. They're responsible for setting the budget from recommendation from the administration. They're responsible for curriculum of the district. They're responsible for supervising and evaluating the superintendent. They're responsible for athletics. I don't know how that stayed in the law. They hired the athletic director, believe it or not. And I think they have only one more piece. Other than that, that is strictly what the school board does. And it's important that as we look to come out of receivership, that we provide, I want to say mandatory because we've tried this before in the past, where school boards have been offered professional development opportunities and they don't show up. You're running a $282 million enterprise. If you have someone that doesn't know how to run a checkbook or hasn't had a job but is popular and ran for school board and gets on the school board, how is that person going to learn any of those skills? So professional development is good for school board members. And I think it's important because professional development also gives you an opportunity to help community leaders that are serving on boards to understand how data is utilized in schools when you're trying to measure effectiveness of programs, of curriculum, and of student achievement. So I think the common denominator, whichever way the community decides to construct a governance body, professional development has to be a must for them.
Arlene?
Yes. In your current or previous role, were there any missteps? What did you learn, and what would you do differently if selected for this position?
Oh, boy, you guys have a plan taking people to the past or the back, huh? Yes, I said earlier on in my early years, there were mistakes made, and I've learned from those mistakes. And one key mistake that I made that helped me appreciate and value what teachers do in the classroom is not put impressions on teachers or demands on teachers on what's working with students or what's not working with students. So I asked the teacher at the technical school, because we had students that were failing class, and if they failed their core subjects, they were going to repeat the school year. And because of their age, they were going to probably drop out of school. We had more students than failing. I worked with my team to develop a program called the PASS program, Plan for After-School Success. And what I had to do was negotiate with the teachers union to sit down with the teachers and have a conversation about grades. This is where we've had conversations about what is a 0. Is it a 0 or is it a 59? Isn't it the same letter grade, an F? So we had conversations with the teachers about them allowing students that failed their class to come after school and redo the work. And if they passed the work that was supervised by a certified teacher, they would give them the lowest passing grade, which was a 60. Now, you can have a 60 and you can have 3 80s, and it's still going to be pretty low, but at least it's not a 59. The mere fact that we entered in conversation with the teachers to talk about what the goal was for kids to be able to succeed, or else they were going to fall short, and how the school would look of having a dropout rate that was going up, they bought into it. They provided input. They provided the teachers, because I hired the teachers for the after-school program, and we saw a drop in the amount of kids that were getting Fs during that particular school year. But it was all because I learned from my mistake of including teachers when you're trying to develop programs, especially alternative programs for kids.
Warner?
Thank you, Ralph, for that. My question is, could you tell us about a time when you developed or inherited a plan and determined that it needed to change because it wasn't working? What steps did you take to implement those changes?
Oh boy, a plan that I inherited.
Or developed,
Or developed.
but saw that needed to change. How did you go about changing it?
One of the things that I think that I'm compelled to do in any effective administrator is to constantly assess and reassess how things are going. And one part of being a seasoned administrator is you should never, ever be too proud to say, I made a mistake, especially to the folks that you're asking to deliver that plan. You should also never leave the door closed when someone comes and offers a suggestion for how do we make it better, how can we perfect it, how can we streamline it, or how can we replicate it. So oftentimes when we create a plan in my school district, one of the plans that I can think of is when we did, we were working on a new curriculum for our kids. And it happened to be that the kids, I believe the name of the curriculum was Trophies, and kids were not demonstrating the success early on that we thought that they should have. And the administration backed it. And the teachers came to me and said, it's not working for kids. And I said, well, if it's not working, show me the data. And now that you've shown me the data, what's the research? And the new curriculum needs to be culturally sensitive, understanding the socioeconomics of the kids that we have here, and what's the cost factors, and how would it be implemented. So one of the things that I always practice was when I have young administrators, or even teachers, or even parents, you can bring complaints to me and quejas, but you better bring solutions also, or recommendations, because it's easy to throw bombs and be in the cheap seats versus being on the playing field. And that's the rule of thumb that I've always used. So I've learned that through my experiences and my years that I've had as an educator, that even the best laid plan sometimes can go astray, and you always have to adjust. The important part of it all is that you're always assessing, and are you reaching those benchmarks? And if you're not reaching those benchmarks, why? You have to continue to delve into those plans so that you can make sure that you're on target. And at the end of the day, if it's true, and the research was done and the data is showing you, you stick to it through some type of longevity to determine if it's effective for kids.
I have question 6. Over the past several years, Lawrence Public Schools has adopted high-quality and culturally relevant curriculum materials across our schools. What experience do you have in leading district-level professional development tied to curriculum implementation? How would you tackle this issue in a district that values school autonomy?
Excellent question, Ms. Mariano. If there's one thing that I champion consistently is professional development. And professional development is not just for teachers, it's for the custodian, it's for the food service worker, all the way up to the superintendent. If we're truly lifelong learners and teachers, times constantly change. We have to stay current with what the research has indicated and what has been proven through the data for effective teaching. In a district that you have autonomy, I think the way that you have to address that is that you have to put the frameworks together with principals of letting them know that professional development, how many hours of professional development needs to be dedicated for each of your buildings. One of the things that I find, especially in school districts that have autonomy, in order to make sure that everyone is on the same page, professional development has to be administered consistently across the district. One strategy that we've implemented in my school district is called Book Talk, where we select as a faculty an educational book, and we take that book and we read it as an entire school. And on a monthly basis, we get together and we break down into building groups or program groups, because you know everyone can read the same book and you're all going to have a different interpretation of the chapters, so that we have a chance to have discussions. Let me give you an example of that component of professional development and why something like Book Talk is important. And it pertains, this comes from Teach Like a Champion, and this is the 3rd rendition. While most students, more students than ever before, are enrolling in college, far fewer are succeeding once they get there. 40% of college students, including 66% of Black and 53% Latinx college students, take at least one remedial course where they spend time and money learning skills that they were told that they've already mastered in high school. College remediation costs students and their families $1.5 billion annually, with 1 in 4 students spending an average of $3,000 extra to earn their degrees. First-time bachelor's degree candidates who take a single remedial course, first time, 74% of them have dropped out of school. I want you to think about what that is. So when we talk about the opportunity gap, now within one of the chapters, it talks about students' performance. And students perform better when they had access to 4 key areas. And this is why I think professional development has to be across the district, that we all have common denominators. Grade appropriate assignments, strong instruction, deep engagement, and teachers who hold high expectations. If you just give kids because you like them and they sit there and they're quiet, we give them an 80%, doesn't do well. High expectations is important, but again, it's all about professional development. That's only one small component that we do. I do believe that one of the areas that we lack a lot in, and it's no one's fault because of so many other priorities in Lawrence, is that we don't provide enough professional development opportunities for our teachers and our administrators.
Edgar?
Sorry, there's a two-part question, so it's a little long. What are the important considerations you have for establishing yourself as the LPS superintendent in your first 100 days?
Repeat that again, Edgar.
Okay. What are the important considerations
Gotcha.
you have for establishing yourself as the LPS superintendent in your first 100 days and determining the top priorities for the year based on what you know about the district? And then the follow-up question to that, how would you go about building and creating connections in our community? Sorry, that's a long question.
I think you wrote a thesis. Okay, so the first part of that, the first 100 days, my plan would be to take on what we refer to as learning walks and not open my mouth, to listen, to observe, and watch. Visit every school and see how the cultural norms are administered in those schools, what makes those schools tick. I would meet with every department to hear of their needs and what are they doing in their schools. I would meet with every component of the different unions to understand them and to hear what their priorities are. And I would make sure that I spend time at the high school with high school kids so kids get to know and provide them the opportunity and invite them to sit on my student advisory council. That's one of the things that I spoke to students about today when they said, you know, we're not truly supported in being involved in the decision-making process. I said, that's because you need to be able to know how to express yourself. But as the old adage is, people help support those things they help create. Students help support if you're going to administer discipline policies or a student handbook, if they have input in it. And you know what I found out with kids when you put them on advisory councils or give them a voice? They're harder on themselves than the adults are on them. So I think it's important that I get around the district. The first 100 days is about looking, listening, and learning, and finding out individuals and trying to remember the leaderships in the buildings, and try to sit in on parent councils meetings, on coffees that they might have. And obviously, I would love to make sure that I give parents an opportunity to meet and greet with me at every school building. 3 priorities that I have. Number 1 priority is to put together a strategic plan with all of the stakeholders to submit to the Department of Education to come out of receivership. And that includes with the governance structure and me providing guidance to the decision makers. Priority number 2 is addressing what I believe needs to be addressed at the high school. We created Abbott Academy under the first receiver. And unfortunately, when we created that, all focus was on Abbott Academy, and all of the other learning academies started to get watered down. Along the way now, 12, 15 years later, there's been a whole change at what is administered and what's done, even though the school setting is a good school setting there. But I think it's an opportunity right now for us to come together as a school district, and let's look at what's going on across America at high schools. There are wonderful, wonderful things. Some of those things are in place already. For example, early college programs that you have here at the high school. I didn't know that next year Lawrence High School will have the biggest early college program in the state. That's something to be celebrated. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about it. Okay? But I also think that we also need to look at other perspectives. That is internships, STEM education, and career technical education. I know that all of our students that come to the high school wish that they can go to the technical school. They don't because there's no room at the technical school. But as the saying goes, if you can't take Moses to the mountain, let's bring the mountain to Moses. And what I mean by that is, so why don't we establish one academy here with career technical education of the 10 highest functioning career techs: biotech, veterinarian, health services. Those are the types of things that I think that we need to look at. Why don't we explore changing the schedule of the school year? There are school districts across the country now that have a 4-day student-to-teacher school day. That doesn't mean that the 5th day that they're off. That's for their internships, their partnerships, and independent studies. But it also saves the district money, Ms. Mariano, because now I got 40 days of professional development opportunities for teachers in the district that we can really hone in on our skills and function like a unit to make sure that kids are succeeding. Connections in the community, Edgar. Because I'm from this community, I know the stakeholders. I know most of the nonprofit organizations. So I'll give you some data. There's over 187 places of worships here in this community. There's somewhere around 190 nonprofit organizations. When you know that data and when you know the community at large, it's easy to access them. And it's important to me that I become a visual person and be the biggest cheerleader for Lawrence Public Schools. Other ways to make sure that I have connections is meet and greet, have the doors open on the weekends, on Saturdays. This is a very sports-oriented community, the adults. Be able to mingle with them and to share some ideas and the thoughts that we have in what's going on in Lawrence Public Schools. Did I get all three?
You did, thank you. Yes.
Mayor, number 8.
Mr. Herrero, what make you the best candidate for Lawrence Public School Superintendent?
That's one that I have to think about, huh? A little bit. What makes me the best candidate? All right, I'm going to try to share that with you. I have a proven record, success record, of over 17 years of student success. Proven. My kids in my district go to some of the best high schools in the entire Northeast. Our test scores demonstrate that our programs help kids succeed. Kids that go on to great high schools go on to great colleges. Many of my students have studied at MIT and Harvard. My knowledge, my depth knowledge of governance is probably second to none. I've served on this school committee back in the early 90s, so I know firsthand what the role of a school board member is. I've worked with parents that served on school committees and know the challenges that they face. I've worked and functioned with a regional board. So with a regional board, they have regional differences and different interests. At the technical school, you have 4 communities with 4 different priorities. Try to work with those individuals to make sure that they're still focused on student success. Lastly is the knowledge that I have and the working experience that I have with families in this community. I have over 40 years of experience. Today, when I traveled this school district, what made me most proud is seeing so many of my students that are educators. Heck, 2 of them are principals. That just means that I'm old. But the mere fact that I have a commanding knowledge of all aspects of this community, and I've been brought up in this community, makes me your ideal candidate to lead this district.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our, do we have time for one follow-up? I think so.
We have 7 minutes, so we do.
Okay.
6 minutes and 40 seconds.
The follow-up that we have for you is if we were to ask teachers or staff who report to you, what would they say your biggest opportunity for growth is?
Is that I support professional development for them, and I try to promote from within, and I create opportunities for them.
Okay. That concludes our questions. Now we'd like to give you an opportunity to ask us a question.
Okay. Now that we've finished the interview process, what is the next step in the selection for your
All right.
candidate?
What we, our goal is to make a final decision by next week.
Okay, thank you. A little bit of your priorities now that you've served on the Alliance Board. I'm sure that you've gotten a flavor of the school district, and it's a big school district with a lot of complex issues. But what is the priority for the Alliance Board? What is your number one priority after selecting the superintendent?
Oh, I mean, I could,
I think if you ask me what my number one priority is, that the new superintendent coming in has to be the right person for the children in order for the children to be successful and be able to move forward. The superintendent has to understand curriculum, understand parent engagement, understand, like you said, professional development, understand the needs of our families, and work cooperatively with the fantastic staff to get our kids to cross that line.
Excellent priorities.
I'd like to add, in terms of priorities, because I think we all have, we all wear different hats too in the board as well, but I do think that knowledge of the community and just collaborating with the community and use the community resources, because there are so many of them in Lawrence, and we are very fortunate to have them, use them as the infrastructure of the Lawrence Public Schools and make sure that our students are using those resources that are there for them. You can't do it all alone.
Absolutely. It takes a village to raise a child. If I can add, Madam Chair, just one thing. At the very beginning of the receivership, when Lawrence first went into receivership, one of the most important, impactful factors that had happened was the amount of partnerships that were created with nonprofit agencies and other youth-serving agencies. You created enrichment programs, you created homework opportunities, and you created opportunities for tutoring. And I think that that was wonderful. So I'm a strong advocate to make sure that there are partnerships and we open all doors possible to make sure that kids have those opportunities.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for being here.
Before you go, we have something for you that the mayor would like to present to you to thank you for taking part in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought it was the keys or what have you to your villa. No? Okay.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dolores Calaf,
Yes.
Edgar de Leon,
Yes.
Arlene Garcia,
Yes.
Juana Matias,
Yes.
Maria Muller, Mayor Brian De Peña,
Yes.
Chair Patricia Mariano.
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you and good night.